Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Tonight we have a seasonal list. We do not do many of these seasonal lists on Channel Ram, but of course I had to do something a little different than all the other channels. So today we're going to do a discontinued seasonal list. So we're going to take 10 fragrances from the designer side of things, and we're going to do 10 fragrances from the niche side of things, all according to Parfumo are discontinued, okay? So that's the strategy today. 10 fragrances from designers, 10 fragrances from the niche side, all discontinued, fragrances that I want to wear in fall, fragrances that I'm looking forward to wearing in fall. You're going to see a lot of tobacco, booze, spices, leather. You know, these are the type of fragrances that really kind of jump out to me. Ambers, of course. And so a lot of these heavier type notes, maybe a little bit of oud as well, but I'm not including any of the artisanal brands in here. That pretty much everything they offer is discontinued as soon as it sells out, right? This is just designer and niche, okay? So let's get started. I'm going to skip into the day because this could be a fairly long video, and we're just going to hop right into it. So we're going to start on the designer side. So first, 10 designers. So the first one is actually a little known designer that if you've been watching my channel, I've discussed here and there occasionally, but it's one that gets almost no love at all, none. And actually, I got this from a fellow YouTuber, Keelan, Sense of South Jersey. So thank you, my friend. And he gave this to me for a very, very fair price. And this is called Carrington. Charles of the Ritz was actually the creator of this. And this has a very interesting backstory. So this is Carrington for men. That does say Carrington. I don't know if you can see. There you go, Carrington. But this is an amazing, to me, fougere. Oh, I absolutely love this stuff. It is... There's something about it that's slightly playful, okay, because the fragrance was released in 1984, and the whole idea is that they released a women's fragrance and a men's fragrance based on the TV soap Dynasty, okay? So it was a very popular TV soap opera called Dynasty back in the 80s. And there were some characters, Blake and Crystal Carrington, who were like seen as the epitome of class and upper crust of society and all this stuff, okay? So it was made to celebrate the love that lives forever, is the quote, according to Charles of the Ritz. Now, this is a very aromatic, very vanillic amber take on fougere. So it doesn't have the very, very sharp anise that you're going to get in the 70s fougères, like Azzaro Parome or anything like that. It doesn't have the very sharp, you know, opening. It doesn't have the sort of traditional hardcore fougere structure like you're going to find in Gucci Nobile or something like that. This is softer. Everything's kind of rounded out. They've made it a little bit more vanillic. There is still a little bit of anise, but of course the harsher notes are kind of rounded out and softened out. And there is an unbelievable note of heliotrope in here. And heliotrope adds this amazing sort of gumminess to it, you know, like Play-Doh or taking a mold of your tooth at the dentist or something. And it just adds, you know, it balloons the sort of depth of the fragrance. Heliotrope sometimes feels like you're like blowing up this balloon, you know, and the fragrance here is so sticky, ambery. It does have the oak moss, the old school oak moss. They're still trying to recreate that feeling of a fern, but it's done in a way that is so different. And even though, you know, you may smell this and think of your father's cologne, some say it reminds them of Brut and stuff like that. I think it's a very unique take on a fougere, and I really, really think that this is a little bit of a hidden gem. But on the designer side, Charles of the Ritz was one of the sort of creators of the fragrances behind the scenes for brands like YSL. They did Koros and you know, Opium and all that stuff. They were one of the distributors, and so seeing them have their own little brand was kind of cool. But really, really, really good stuff to my nose anyway. So I'll do a review of this one of these days. So that is Carrington, the first one. Okay, the second one is the only one on this list that you can still buy a version of that's fairly close to this, although this particular version that I'm going to show is completely discontinued. So number 2 on the designer list is going to be Égoïste by Chanel, but specifically the Cologne Concentrée version. So I don't know if you guys know this, but in 1990, when the original Égoïste was released, Chanel released a huge ad campaign. It was something like $50 million or something, and the fragrance flopped. For whatever reason, it was not, you know, what was popping at the time, okay? It wasn't the aquatic, fresh fragrances that started to really sell in the 90s. You know, this is a heavier, spicy, woody, and actually, interestingly enough, I wore this as my scent of the day this week to work. Just maybe 2 or 3 days ago, I wore this as my scent of the day. And I'll tell you what, the woods, the cinnamon, the classiness of Chanel, of course, is there, but there's some heaviness, you know, the woods are there, the sandalwood, the tobacco comes through, you get the vanillas and leathers and ambers and all this stuff, but it's a blend of heavier ingredients that feel, you know, that just feel thick, and it really feels like a fall fragrance. It feels like you want to see the brown on the leaves and, you know, big piles of leaves on the ground and stuff like that, which in Texas, of course, we don't have. It's still 90 degrees here on the highs. Even though it's October, we're still getting 90-degree weather. So I wore this because it's that time of year and I want to wear it, but the weather isn't matching. But man, this is the kind of thing that I kind of see in my head when I think about sort of brown leaves and fall weather and stuff like that. Égoïste is perfect for it for me. And the difference really with Égoïste Cologne Concentrée is it's just a stronger version. This is supposed to be in eau de parfum, basically, is the way to think about it. But they didn't call men's fragrances parfum back in the day because men wouldn't buy it. So it was a cologne, because that's what men wore. They wore colognes. So it was a Cologne Concentrée. That was Chanel's way to play with words, but still kind of do an EDP. So it's supposed to be a heavier, thicker, richer version of Égoïste, and that's exactly what it is. So Égoïste Cologne Concentrée, number 2. Number 3 on the list is a flanker, one of the few flankers that we have on this list. Actually, it may be the only flanker that we have on this list. And so this one is called Fahrenheit Absolute. And this is a discontinued Fahrenheit flanker. You can see some of the notes on the back. There is an oud note right there. There's a myrrh note, which is also beautiful in fall. Myrrh adds this sort of earthy, sort of fungal-like feel to a fragrance, okay? And so this is very spicy. And Francois Demachy, I really think, was at the top of his game when he was using things like myrrh. And here he's kind of tied it all together with this oud accord, which was, of course, very popular in 2009. This is just a couple years after Tom Ford's oud wood kind of changed the game. And so you get Fahrenheit, you get a little bit of that gasoline. I know Mark from the Robes 08 channel, which if you have not watched my interview with him, I would urge you to check that out, that live stream. It was amazing to have him on the channel, but he called this the devil's juice. After smelling all the crazy fragrances that I've smelled, I don't know if I would say this is the devil's juice, but I would say for a designer, this is a very dark fragrance for a designer, okay? That's really the way that I would put it. If you've smelled the real oud fragrances from Ensar and, you know, Agar Aura and all of that stuff, this probably won't shock you very much. But for a designer, this is a pretty brave release and one of my favorite versions of Fahrenheit. I love the oriental touches to this, you know. They tried to do something very similar with the Parfum version, but they added way too much vanilla to me. It's a little bit sweeter, and here it still kind of keeps that masculinity without going into the really sweeter side of the vanilla, which they added to the Parfum. So this is discontinued. Everything on this list is, of course, discontinued. The Parfum you can still buy. Okay, next on the list, number 4, we have I think our only celebrity fragrance on the list, if I'm not mistaken, and this is from the house of Kinski. This is called Kinski by Kinski, is basically what it is. This is long discontinued, named after the very troubled actor Klaus Kinski, and I need to spray this stuff because I adore Kinski. I actually think it is one of the greatest celebrity fragrances of all time, and I also think that It is Giza Schoen's greatest work of all time. I think this is his masterpiece that no one talks about. Oh, fuck. I mean, my God. This only came out in 2012, already discontinued, very hard to find, actually. We had to go to Germany, me and Rich Mitch, to get our bottles of Kinski. Well, we didn't go to Germany. We found them in Germany, and they shipped them to us. But this opens up with this aldehydic cannabis accord, one of my favorite cannabis openings in perfumery. And instantly you get the darkness. So there's little touches of fruitiness from the blackcurrant. There's juniper, there's bergamot that adds a little bit of freshness. But instantly you get this dark, brooding castoreum. And I think that really is supposed to almost hint at the sort of troubled state of mind that Klaus Kinski was in. He was kind of one of those mad genius type of people. He had a lot of problems. There were some really dark claims against him, which I won't get into. But, you know, without sort of backing the man, I will say that the fragrance itself in here, and I see why it didn't sell, because this is a very challenging fragrance. The castoreum hits you almost right from the beginning, and there's all these weird twists and turns. Like there's some hedione, which gives it kind of this fresh, jasmine-y, floral type thing. There's marine notes in here. So, I mean, you imagine castoreum with marine notes, but if you didn't know about the marine notes, you may just think it was part of the freshness of the fragrance. There's florals, there's magnolia, which you don't often see in these type of fragrances. I know Bortnikov loves using magnolia. There's rose, there's nutmeg, there's patchouli, vetiver, labdanum, musk, styrax, amber, benzoin, cedarwood, and then there's this suede-like dry down. I think this is Giza Schoen's pure masterpiece, and you can tell it's in his Molecule bottles that he ended up, you know, using, and this got discontinued, and the Molecule brand kind of took off. But man, if you're into animalic fragrances, Kinski is I would almost say a masterpiece. It's his masterpiece that no one talks about. Most of his fragrances are so likable, office-friendly, whatever you want to call it. This just kind of takes it to another level of artistic. If you're the kind of guy who likes art in a bottle, or woman, if you're the kind of person who likes art in a bottle, man, I mean, now some of the labdanum is coming through. Like it's becoming a little bit more resinous, and God, it's beautiful. I love the animalic side of Kinski. Perfect for fall. Perfect. So that is Kinski from 2012. That was number 4. All right, number 5. Number 5 is a fragrance that just recently got discontinued. It was produced by many different distributors over the years. The bottle that I grabbed was Bethco, but I think it was produced by International Parfums or something. I forget, but Bethco, oh man, it's on the tip of my tongue, but multiple distributors all the way up now to Coty was the last one to distribute this fragrance, and then they discontinued it altogether. So there's a lot of stock of this floating around because it was created for so long by so many different distributors. But if you can find one of the older bottles that says Cologne on it instead of Classic, it later became Lagerfeld Classic, but originally it was just Lagerfeld Cologne. The late great genius Karl Lagerfeld designed this bottle basically. Mark Rosen designed the bottle officially, but Lagerfeld had a hand, especially in creating this. And if you listen to the older bottles, they have this metal kind of clink to them. The newer ones are all plastic, but the older ones have this metal clink to them. And so that's why this was here, so you could easily kind of pull the cap off. But man, if you like fragrances from the 80s, especially Lagerfeld had some fragrances called KL Homme and then KL for Women, which won all kind of awards in the early 80s. If you like Obsession, which Obsession was kind of like, it was an obsession in the 80s for some people. This is kind of where it all started. This kind of powdery, spicy, oriental fragrance that, you know, actually, I need to spray this on skin. It's been a while, and I'm going to bed after this, so screw it. Let's put some of these on skin. But this has some of those masculine, especially the Cologne version. One of the reasons why I said go for the Cologne if you can. It's been a while since I've sprayed this. I actually have multiple bottles. I have 3 or 4 bottles of this stuff. Oh my God, man. Yes, so the older version, you you're going to get less of the easier notes to digest. You're going to get more of the masculine notes. So you're going to get the tarragon, which gives you a little bit of that anise kind of tint, if you will. You're going to get some green notes in the top. Kind of think of what Cartier did with Must de Cartier for Women, which came out a couple years after this and was clearly influenced by Lagerfeld Classic. Tobacco is one of my favorite notes in here. Oh yeah, and in the vintage, the tobacco note is amped up so much more. In the modern, the tobacco note and those more challenging masculine notes like the tarragon and stuff like that are turned down, and kind of more of the musks and ambers and vanillas, the easier notes to digest, are turned up. So it smells more just like a powdery vanillic fragrance. Whereas the Cologne version, you get more of the tobacco, more of the tarragon, more of the manly notes that kind of really make it lean masculine. Even though it has a lot of very unisex notes in here, especially the powdery orris, which does come across as powdery. Even in the vintage, it's a powdery fragrance. This is the fragrance that Al Pacino wore when he wanted to get into character of doing the Scarface movie. He sprayed himself heavily with this periodically throughout the filming, so he can kind of put himself in that state of mind. I love it. I absolutely love Lagerfeld Classic, or Lagerfeld Cologne, the vintage version. If you can get that one, get it. If you can only get the new one, the classic version, it's still good, okay? I wouldn't say it's a terrible reformulation. International Parfums, I think, is the distributor I was trying to think of earlier. So yeah, Bethco, International Parfums, and Coty, and I think there may even be one more in there. And so multiple distributors have created this. And I think maybe even the original one from '78 was just Lagerfeld. So yeah, I mean, this is really something special. Don't let the $20 or $30 price tag put you off, because this is a special fragrance that influenced so much going forward. So that was number 5. Number 6. Number 6 is staying in that theme of tobacco and fruits and, oh god, you know what? I'm gonna put this one on skin too. Fuck it. Let's get this party going, shall we? So number 6 on the designer list is a fragrance from the house of Michael Kors. And it's originally the original fragrance from the house, if I'm not mistaken, from 2001 for men. And it's called Michael for men. Now, there are different versions of this. If you can get the one that just says Michael at the top, that's what I would recommend getting. I think the next version of this fragrance, which is still good, says Michael Kors, but written across, you know, horizontal, just like my bottle is written. But then they kind of changed it and re-released it in a little bit of a different form where it says Michael Kors going up and down. And that's a little bit of a different fragrance. Still a good one, but if you can get this one, this is the one I would recommend. One of my friends in Fragcom very kindly sent me a cap, because this was a tester, and he sent me the cap to kind of complete the look, which is very, very kind of him. But this is elemi, cardamom. Elemi is also beautiful in the fall, because it's kind of like a little bit of like a lemony, frankincense-like smell. Oh, it's such a great designer tobacco. You get some star anise. The star anise in the top will remind you a little bit of Opium Pour Homme, the men's version that Jacques Cavalier did. Lagerfeld Cologne, though, man. And then the star of Michael for men is basically this suede note mixed with pipe tobacco. So you get pipe tobacco and suede and this beautiful dried fruit accord that starts to unfurl itself with some lovely sandalwood, patchouli, and frankincense, which adds to the spiciness, of course, and the smokiness kind of coming through. Imagine the pipe tobacco and then the frankincense doing the job of kind of completing the image of the smoke kind of rising to the heavens. Woody, spicy. You know, the cardamom is made up of the spice with the very dry smelling thyme and star anise. Beautiful tobacco. If you're a fan of tobacco, designer style tobaccos, this is really a beautiful fragrance. Perfect for fall. I mean, the color of the juice shows you it's just perfect for fall. That golden amber hue. Oh man, so good. These two are just so good. Okay, so that was number 7. So number 7 on the list is a leather, and this takes heavily after one of my all-time favorite leathers of all time, which came out just 4 or 5 years before this. I think 4 years before this. And this is Moschino pour Homme. So the House of Moschino is an Italian house, and this is a very spicy leather. There's some green touches in here, and there's a little bit of this very oily rosemary. Actually, it's a very oily leather in the first place, I would say. There's caraway, jasmine, orris root, carnation, old school carnation, rose, oak moss, leather, castoreum, labdanum, styrax, benzoin, cedar, tonka bean, and amber. And if you're a fan of the Bel Ami style leathers, this is definitely one to put on the list. Bel Ami is not discontinued. This one is. So if you're into kind of hunting the rarer, harder to find fragrances for the collection, Moschino pour Homme is absolutely beautiful if you're a leather lover. You cannot go wrong with Moschino pour Homme. I still prefer Bel Ami. This is a beautiful take, and done kind of in the Italian style, of course. You get a little bit more of that hit of citruses in the top, whereas Bel Ami just seems to kind of jump right into it. Moschino pour Homme, you know, gives you a little bit of that Italian style, you know, the bergamot and the citruses in the top. Okay, next on the list, we have number 8. So 8, 9, and then 10, and then we'll move on to niche. So number 8 is a discontinued Thierry Mugler flanker of Amen, and this is called A Taste of Fragrance. And there's the note listing on the back if you want to take a look. What's it say? Succulent, hot, and spicy. Succulent. So it's a gourmand spicy fragrance that has a chili note in it. It's coriander, peppermint, bergamot, lavender, red pepper, patchouli, cedarwood, coffee, tonka bean, musk, and styrax. And this is probably one of my favorite flankers. I love Pure Malt. That also could have been on this list, but surprisingly, Pure Malt says it's still in production by Thierry Mugler, or by Mugler, which I don't think that's the case, but since Parfumo says it, I didn't go with it. I went with this. Pure Havane also could be on this list, the tobacco honey version of Amen. But this is one that I think gets heavily underlooked, underrated. I love the spiciness of it. And I think they even worked with a famous gourmand chef, if I remember properly. That's why they called it A Taste of Fragrance, because they worked with a chef to get this chili note just right. Probably one of my favorite chili notes in a fragrance. The other one being Fate Woman by Amouage, which I reviewed on the channel. You can check that out. The chili note in that is to die for. The 2 of my all-time favorite chili notes. Okay, number 9. Number 9 on the list is a Tom Ford. Tom Ford is the only house that double-dipped in the designer and the niche realm, because there is one from their designer line here, and then they also have a higher end they call the private blend line. So I'm calling that the niche line. So Tom Ford is in both of these lists. But the designer Tom Ford is this, Tom Ford Extreme. Now this is a very underrated fragrance, extremely underrated. It was actually done by 2 amazing perfumers, Claude Durr and Pierre Negrin. And Pierre Negrin went on after this to create some fantastic fragrances for Amouage, but he did this before his Amouage days. And this is, spicy, woody, leathery, smoky, fruity. There's a plum and a fig combination here, which is amazing. There's a truffle note in the base. But really, the fragrance can be summed up with this amount of depth. You know, a lot of these fragrances I tried to show today would fit perfect in fall because of the amount of depth to the fragrance, the richness to them. And this is one of the richest, very oriental in style, but there's so much kind of going on, spicy, smoky, leathery, and I mean, listen to the note listing. Cinnamon, basil, cardamom, cistus, coriander, lemon, and chamomile. That's the top. Heart of plum, sandalwood, cedarwood, violet, fig, saffron, and thyme, with a base of patchouli, truffle, which Tom Ford was playing with this truffle accord, black orchid, and all these other truffle type accord fragrances that he put out. This is my favorite of the bunch, though, this Extreme. Balsam fir, so the green sort of freshening aspects, if you will. Frankincense, leather, vetiver, caramel, rum. Again, I mentioned there would be some boozy scents in here. And this is one of the first, but definitely not the last. And vanilla, okay? And so it just has so much going on, and it's perfect for fall. Again, color of the bottle pretty much says it all. That brown fall feel is here, and it's perfect for once the weather starts biting a little bit and starts getting a little cold, which for us probably won't be until 2025, but you know, that's what happens when you live in Texas. Okay, number 10 on the designer side is a YSL fragrance. I feel like YSL constantly gets dissed because of what they have become. Some of these gems get overlooked nowadays, but man, there's something about this fragrance that when it starts to turn fall, I want to wear it. I want to reach for these type of fougères. I mentioned it with the very first one with Carrington, and this kind of rounds out the list of the designers. This is Jazz. I've got a full review of this on the channel if you want to check it out. I've got 3 bottles in my collection. I love this stuff so much. Very spicy, woody take on a fougère. Let me spray it. But I've got a, like I said, I've got a full review on Jazz if you really want to check it out. Jean-Francois Lati is the perfumer, and Jazz. Oh man. Oh, I just love it. Jazz is so classy. There's something about this that just screams fall for some reason. Fall and spring. Some of these are tweeners, you know. I'd call them like in-between season type fragrances. This is one. I love wearing this in spring. I love wearing it in fall. God, the spices, the nutmeg. There's a little bit of anise, but again, it's not super sharp. It's not super sharp like some of the fougères that came a decade before Jazz, right? Cardamom, there's a little bit of green basil. The lavender is not medicinal. It's it doesn't give you that cheap laundry detergent feel. It's beautiful. The tarragon, which is one of my secret ingredients. I love tarragon. Bergamot, cinnamon, jasmine, geranium, iris, carnation, oak moss, sandalwood, leather, tobacco. So the leather and tobacco is one of the things that really makes this, I think, complete as a fall scent. Because yes, it's spicy. Yes, it's woody. But that tobacco note, the you know, the brown crinkly feeling of the leaf of the tobacco. Oh man, it's just, I can't wait to wear this when the weather turns. So yes, YSL Jazz, go watch my full review if you want to see me ramble about that for about 45 minutes. Okay, so that rounds out the designers. So let's take a quick hydration break, and then we will get to the niche. So we got some good brands to discuss. We've got Serge Lutens, Creed, Amouage, L'Artisan, MFK, Mona Diorio, and Roja. So hell of a lineup here. So the first one on the list, and I just went alphabetically, by the way, and so we're starting with Amouage, is Myths Man, stupidly discontinued, also stupidly on my part, only buying the 50 ml bottle. This is one that easily should have been the 100 ml. It's my only 50 ml bottle in the collection, and now you know, I'm like kicking myself I didn't buy the 100 ml at the time. But Myths Man is one of the most artistic fragrances you'll ever come across. This is the epitome of what Amouage used to stand for as far as artistry goes, and why Christopher Chong must be brought back, in my personal opinion. Oh my God. I mean, I've got a full review of this on the channel as well. There's chrysanthemum, which is a flower that in many cultures is like a funeral type flower. So there's a beautiful purple iris, and the color of the bottle to me is perfect. This is a perfect color representation because you get that purple feel iris gives you sometimes. Obviously, it's powdery, it's rooty, it's earthy, it's dirty, and there's some elemi in here, so you kind of get the memory of Amouage with the frankincense, but they used elemi to soften it up a little bit. There's vetiver, there's rum. Rum sweetens it up a little bit. but adds the booziness. And really the star of the show is this leathery ash note, and not like smoke or, you know, frankincense where, you know, you get the burning incense or something like that. No, no, no. This is ash, like volcanic ash, like people, you know, frozen into place from Pompeii exploding on them all those years ago. I mean, straight ash. And it really kind of is a very spiritual fragrance because it makes you think of your humanity. You know, it makes you think one day you'll be potentially ash. Ashes to ashes kind of thing. It makes you think that, you know, we're not here forever. We're here for a short amount of time. And it's just such an artistic scent. Go watch my full review if you want kind of a deep dive into it. It's smoky, spicy, resinous. You know, it's got the boozy aspect to it. It's got that weird chrysanthemum. Oh man, it's phenomenal. And it's really a fragrance for fragrance lovers, I would say. That's the way I would put it. It's a release for the hardcore frag heads. The average person's going to smell that and say that smells like a nightmare. You know, it smells like an absolute nightmare. But for someone who loves artistic perfumery, Mitts, man, and I understand why they discontinued it now that Amouage wants to go more towards that, I would say, mainstream area, if that's fair to say. They want to go more mainstream. I just saw their new bottles that they put out for their new collection today, the Essences collection, as if the exceptional X-Ray wasn't enough. Now they need the Essences. But anyways, I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole. I haven't smelled them yet. Maybe they're amazing, but I'm not holding my breath. Okay, let's go to the Creed. So number 2 on the niche discontinued list, I can't wait to wait to wear in fall, is this. What is this, you might say? Well, this, and this is my dent, by the way. I put this dent in this bottle. This is not a partial that I bought. I wore this fragrance. Oh, and I love it. Actually, I'm running out of room to spray. I'm gonna spray this shit because this is Acier Aluminum from 1973. Oh, and many people say there is this weird banana note in the top. You know, this fragrance to me is, it's got little hints of Venezia, which comes a decade later in the 80s, which I reviewed both of these on the channel. I reviewed this and Creed's Venezia if you want to check that out. But it's got little hints of that. There's that vanilla with the Creed sparkly old school ambergris, but there's this weird 1970s, you know, Tom Selleck, you know, porn 70s stash thing going on with this weird fruit thing that smells very metallic. And, you know, Acier Aluminum is supposed to reference, I think, like Knight's Chainmail or something like that from back in the day. And so there's this metallic weirdness kind of going on. And there's this weird 70s porn stash thing with weird a fruit cocktail that has this strange banana type thing to it. It's really interesting, I'll tell you that. And I love Acier Aluminum. It is one of my favorite gray cap Creeds, which are the old EDTs that Creed doesn't do anymore. Everything Creed does now is eau de parfum, okay? And so this and Royal English Leather are my 2 favorites from the gray cap. There are some more gray caps, which I will review, that I hate. I've been waiting to do those. But there are more gray cap reviews coming. Some of them thanks to the kindness of the community. Some of them I've been sitting on because I just hate it so much. I don't even want to spray it again. But this is a pure and absolute love. And I'm going to be really sad when that juice is gone. So Acier Aluminum. So good. Okay, number 3 on the niche discontinued list for fall. We have a fragrance from the house of Javoy. And Javoy is a house that gets overlooked a lot. They make some amazing fragrances at a very fair and decent price. And this one is a 2011 release by Jacques Fleury. And it's called L'Enfant Terrible, the Terrible Child. My understanding of this is the Terrible Child represents cumin, because some people really dislike cumin, And so there's a cumin top note in L'Enfant Teddy Ball that is supposed to kind of run around the scent and screw everything up, right? Like terrible child running around the restaurant, the mom and dad trying to calm it down, the child just basically giving mom and dad the finger and running around all over the place. L'Enfant Teddy Ball is supposed to be representative of that. But to me, it is a niche version of one of the all-time greatest fragrances ever created, which is Féminité du Bois by Serge Lutens. This is a niche version of that. It's very spicy, very woody. The sandalwood in here is one of the best sandalwoods I've ever smelled in like a designer, you know, niche kind of sandalwood. Not like a Ritz sandalwood, but it's so milky and creamy with that cumin, and it's very herbaceous, you know? It's an herbaceous, spicy. They have changed some things a little bit. For example, there's a date note in here. There's no dates in Féminité du Bois. So there's a date note in here, which adds this dry fruitiness. There's an orange tree wood note, which I imagine has an orange tint to it. But, and there's musk in the base. So it's very musky, creamy, spicy, woody, slightly fruity from the weird kind of date thing going on. And of course you have the cumin, which can come across as a little bit sweaty to some people. But for me, that milky sandalwood is just beautiful. And, you know, it kind of solves one of the issues of Féminité du Bois, which is projection and longevity. Some people say it doesn't last too long. Even the vintage bottle that I have, not the original vintage. Rich Mitch says the original vintage is even stronger and really solves that problem. But the bottle that I have, which is right, yeah, is it? Yeah, it's right here. So that one even, you know, I'm ready to reapply after 5 hours or whatever it is. This lasts much, much longer. So you'll get a full workday out of L'Enfant Teddy Ball. Unfortunately, it got discontinued. It didn't sell well for whatever reason. Well, I mean, I could see why. But if you love Féminité du Bois, L'Enfant Teddy Ball is a niche fragrance that I would urge you to get your sniffer on. You may even be able to find it for a great price because so few people care about it. But, oh, Acier aluminum. Oh, mitts, man, my God, man. These are so beautiful. Can't wait to wear them. So here's a newer fragrance to the collection, I would say. This year I added it to the collection, and it was a gift of sorts. This came all the way from Natalia in deepest Poland. So wherever you are, Natalia, hope you are doing well. I have not seen you or heard from you in a long time, so I hope you are mountain climbing and living your dreams. But this is from L'Artisan Parfumeur. It is Traversée de Bosphore, which is a creation by the great Bertrand Duchaufour, one of my favorite perfumers of all time. And this is a fragrance that you may not think I would like, but I'll tell you what, this is a 2010 release, and Bertrand Duchaufour was really hitting on all cylinders back then, okay? So Traversée de Bosphore is a perfect example of Bertrand Duchaufour's genius, the way he would bring in these notes that you just never, ever in a million years would expect, okay? So there is a note of lokum in here, which is like apparently like a Turkish delight dessert, okay? There's pomegranate, which, when's the last fragrance you've had with a pomegranate note, okay? So there's pomegranate and apple with saffron and ginger. Ginger adds the freshness. Saffron adds the sort of chemical feel. I don't know how to describe the saffron in here, but I'll tell you what it does turn into. It turns into this leather, which reminded me a little bit of Gallo. I'd love a bottle of Hermès Gallo one day. This maybe is more artistic than Gallo. Gallo is maybe more classy. I would say Gallo is a little bit more classy, if you will. Has that Hermès, you know, that Hermès, like, you know, kind of like Chanel, that coldness, that upper crust of society, old money feel. And the thing about this, and I'll tell you what, it smells much better on skin. If you smell this on paper, the sweetness really tends to come out. When I smell this on my skin, I get more of the leather and slight hints of animalic bits here and there. It is technically a gourmand, but I really, really like this. Benzoin, musk, cedar. The benzoin really is coming through on the paper, as well as the sweeter notes, the locum. There's a tulip note in here, which is very beautiful as well. It's such a artistic scent. Again, you see the kind of fragrances I'm really excited to wear. I love leathers, and this the sweetness would probably be way too much to wear in any season other than fall or winter, to be quite honest with you. So Traversée de Bosphore, unfortunately, when Puig took over, they discontinued it, so it's gone. Okay, next on the list we have an MFK, and we have a discontinued MFK, probably one of the most artistic MFKs, and it's called Absolute Pour le Soir. And Absolute Pour le Soir was released in 2010. It's a very animalic, spicy fragrance. And I'll tell you what, when I first got this, I was like, man, I don't know how I feel about this. It took me a little bit to kind of come around to it because there is this unbelievable synthetic feel. And Francis Kirkjohn loves making his fragrances smell so synthetic. They almost feel like futuristic cyborg fragrances or something. I don't know. Like he doesn't care that they smell synthetic. In fact, he almost wants you to smell the synthetic pieces start to come through. So it's a very resinous, imagine like a very pissy, animalic honey fragrance. There's a Bulgarian rose honey note in here, which is very specific, by the way. And I think it's the use of cumin and what smell like other animalic notes that are probably not listed that give off this very pissy, sour, sort of spicy animalic amber. Okay, is basically what it is. It's like an animalic amber, okay? Lots of benzoin, a little bit of frankincense, some sandalwood, and this amber accord that just comes across as this very animalic, pissy type accord. But it wasn't necessarily the animalic part that put me off. It was how synthetic it smelled in the opening. Like you were smelling plastic, you know? There was this plasticky feel to Absolute Pour le Soir. The more I've worn it, the more I will tell you this is one of the most creative fragrances MFK has ever done for his own brand. Most of his fragrances for his brand are targeted to the nouveau rich, you know, they want to pay $400 for a fragrance that smells like a $50 designer because they can, kind of thing, you know, and all of his most popular fragrances are of that cut. But this is one for the hardcore frag heads. This is one of the most challenging ones. And he said, you know, we maybe sold 2 or 3 bottles a year. I had to discontinue it. I had to. Didn't have a choice. Once LVMH bought them, we had to discontinue it. And so, you know, if you're into hunting down older, harder to find niches, Absolute Pour le Soir should be on your list. Okay, next on the list, we have a Mona Dior fragrance. And this is probably one of my favorites from the brand that I've smelled so far, although I do have some samples, so you'll be hearing more about this brand in due time. Finding time to do stuff like this is not easy, but this one's called Queer by Mona Dior, and this is the newer bottle. I have the older bottle, and I can tell you now that some air has gotten into this this newer bottle, it is getting closer and closer to the older bottle, okay? At first I thought, man, the older bottle really seems different, but now that there's air getting into the newer bottle, I think I'm wrong. I think that they're basically the same, and I think what ended up happening is that, you know, they may have had to reformulate, and they said, you know what, instead of reformulating, we're just going to discontinue it. So I'm comfortable with saying you can get your hands on any version you can find of this, because it's all discontinued now. But yeah, just this very astringent, industrial style, animalic green. There's an absinthe note in here. Just imagine Edgar Allan Poe drinking absinthe smelling like this. Castoreum, leather. It's a green, smoky leather. Very industrial style. You know, I'm thinking of like smokestacks, old school, like in English Industrial Revolution. And there's this very smoky cade oil note in here, which I feel like gives off maybe just a little bit of this evergreen quality. There's like this evergreen, you know, smell underneath with that industrial leather. Very astringent leather. Really, really like it. And the cardamom comes through pretty strong as far as the spice goes. I love the cooling aspect of the cardamom here with the leather. It's beautiful, man. I'm getting a lot of the cardamom on paper. Beautiful, one of the greatest from the brand, and very sad to see that discontinued. Okay, next on the list we have a Niche. So number 7 on the list. So one of the few discontinued Niche out there, and this one's called Spice Bazaar, and it is exactly what the name says it is. It is a straight up Spice Bazaar fragrance. It is yuzu, ginger, rosemary, juniper in the top, with cumin, cedar wood, and cinnamon in the heart, with a base, if I can get the bottle out, of black pepper, saffron. You can see the older style sort of Niche caps there, and vanilla. And if you take a look at the card, every Niche comes with a card that's supposed to tell you kind of what it's supposed to smell like. So this one literally shows you the colors of being at a Spice Bazaar. So, you know, there's a lot of pepper in here. There's a little bit of an oriental kind of hint, undertone, if you will. But peppers and spices, and you can just see all the different colored spices here. You know, turmeric smells, and just dry, spicy. I really like this. A little bit of an oriental hint underneath because of the vanilla and cinnamon, but one of the better Niche that unfortunately got discontinued. So, so yes, I will be getting around to discussing that further. I need to wear it more, to be honest with you. But yes, I'm very excited about wearing this in fall. These type of spicy fragrances are just perfect for the cooler weather as well. Sad that this one got discontinued. It's about a decade old. Came out in 2014. Okay, let me put all this stuff back together, and then we'll be in the home stretch. Number 8. Number 8 on the list is a Roja fragrance. And let me just put this back. Okay, so number 8 on the list is a Roja fragrance, and it is Fétiche Pour Homme. So I already mentioned Moschino Pour Homme. So now we have a niche version of one of my favorite leathers of all time. And, you know, this is the type of stuff that I really want to reach for when the weather starts to cool off. Fétiche kind of takes that Bel Ami DNA. If you've ever smelled Pure Distance M, the original, you'll have an idea. You'll have a very close approximation of what this smells like. But here they've amped up the frankincense, so it's much smokier. And of course, Roja's done his little tricks here and there. So he's added this fig note, which adds a little bit of fruitiness, some neroli, which adds a touch of freshness here and there. He loves violet, very soft, powdery violet note will kind of peek through the leather a little bit. The details, really. But it's a very leathery, spicy, niche take on that Bel Ami DNA. And stupidly, they discontinued this. I think it's one of the best Rojas, in my opinion. But, you know, you have to kind of like that style of 80s leather. It's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. I think it's it's perfect for my personality and what I like to wear when the leather I got leather on the brain, when the weather starts to cool off. Okay, so final stretch, number 9 and number 10. Number 9 is a honey fragrance, and actually I was thinking there probably could have been more honey scents in here. You know, Luciano Pavarotti comes to mind as something that easily could have been on the designer side of things. Marbert Man, another honey that I think I would love to reach for when the weather starts to cool off. Margaret Gentleman, which also has, I think, a little bit of a honey tint. That's a very animalic, musky fragrance, though. This is maybe a little bit of an easy wear, but I'll tell you what, this is another tweener. So, you know, just like I mentioned previously, some of the fragrances that fit perfectly for those spring and fall times, this is a perfect fragrance for in-between weather. And this is Miel de Bois by Serge Lutens. And so I reviewed this on the channel. If you want to check it out, this was very kindly sent to me by A2. So A2, thank you, my brother. And this is a very unique take on honey. It's crazy. It's almost like you're smelling, Rich Mitch came up with this, by the way, and I talked a little bit about it in the review, but it's almost like you're smelling the honey that was built by the bees that kind of went around and took their pollen from the hawthorn and from the iris flowers around their, you know, beehive, and they came back and made honey with it. It's so unique. Maybe it has a little bit of a gourmand even twist to it, but it's very spicy, very woody. But of course, the beeswax has that. You know, if you've ever actually eaten a not just the honey, but the honey inside of the honeycomb itself. If you've ever eaten the honeycomb itself, it has that very strange texture where it's almost like it's kind of see-through, but it's bendy a little bit, but it's also a little bit chewy when you bite down on it. It has this texture about it, this honeycomb texture with the honey and the beeswax. Go watch my full review if you want to see my full thoughts on Miel de Bois. But man, for the kind of weather we get in Texas in October, like I'm talking about now, where maybe wake up and it's 60s, 70s, then it gets into the 80s or 90s, before it really starts to cool off as we get towards November and December. This is perfect. Miel de Bois is an absolute perfect fragrance. Perfect for in-between weather. Finally, that leaves the probably the most out-and-out amber fragrance on this list. And it's from Tom Ford. Again, it's from their private blend. And it is Amber Absolute. You knew this. You knew we had to have an out-and-out amber. This is just a sticky, hardcore amber. Lots of labdanum. I love the way Tom Ford does ambers. And if you've ever smelled tobacco oud, you'll smell little bits and pieces in Amber Absolute. Frankincense, amber, woody notes, labdanum, and vanilla. Christophe Laudamiel is the perfumer. This is the fragrance that he posted. Costs like $5 to make or something, or $2.50, and Tom Ford was selling it for hundreds. I forgot, but he posted it on his Instagram how much the formula cost. Now the brand would say, well, that doesn't take into account advertising and the bottles and transportation and marketing and blah blah blah. But yeah, granted, the juice inside everyone thinks is so expensive, and he's like, nope, cost like $2.50 or something. I forget the exact price, but I love this. I think it's one of the best ambers. I think it's the only amber that can compete with Ambre Sultan, which is still in production by Serge Lutens. This is discontinued, so it easily made this list. So, okay, so that's my unique way of doing a fall list. 10 discontinued designers, 10 discontinued niche. Hope you found something in here that, you know, you can put on your to sniff list or wish list. Or if you have some of these, you can put it on your to-wear list for fall. Let me know what your favorites are. Love seeing your faces in the comments. Thanks for the support as always. Love doing these videos for you guys. Cheers. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.